Words create thoughts. They can create beliefs in our mind. They can create concepts. They can create emotions. They can create actions, in our thought forms, and they can create, actions. So we should be conscious of the words that we use, and we should choose our words wisely.
Hey friends, this is Chris Jansen. Evil is the destruction of freedom. Welcome to the End Evil podcast. Just wanted to draw your attention to a couple great things you can check out when you're done watching this show. Pop on over to Twitch and check out Brandon Spencer's 24-hour, 24/7 live stream coming at you with truth, freedom, natural law, all the time, every day. Also want to bring your attention to Mondays. You can check out my good friend Crip Rick on Revolution Radio at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. And now, I have a great show for you. Thanks for joining me. Please stop on by to endevil.life and make a small donation or share something from the website. Subscribe to the channels and enjoy the show. Check out the chemtrails. Oh shit.
I'm in a cage. I'm in a prison. I'm in a mental prison, and a physical one at that, and definitely a spiritual one, whether that's recognized at a conscious level or not.
As I wait for my sleep, the situation's got me thinking deep. Will ever the same? And all life is in extinction. Evil creeps in your dreams. Secret teams throwing memes in the filling in the in-betweens. My control for the teens. Now they got you on your knees. I'm making my way through this open maze, but I'm dazed by mass confusion. All the images that they're using.
There's the race to the tip of the top of the pyramid. The pyramid.
Putting up our free will and falling in, to this low level of spiritual awareness, such that these methods can have any effect over us.
Welcome all. This is the End Evil podcast. My name's Chris Jansen, and evil is the destruction of freedom. That's a quote from the book, The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke. If you haven't checked out that book yet, I recommend look it up now and spend a quick day taking it all in. Because what's going on in the world is there's a big thing happening, and it's called slavery, and it's happening on a mass scale. It didn't stop when the chain stopped. It just moved to slavery 2.0 or 3.0, and it's more subtle now. And they control you with invisible chains. And mostly that's done through words and language, and in the form of propaganda, in the form of tricky word phrases. So we had a great chat last week with the One Great Work Warriors, in which we talked about etymology, definitions of words, and it was a great chat, and we want to have some more of it. So I brought on some folks this week to have a roundtable live discussion with me. Anyone in the audience who's watching or listening, you also have the opportunity to join live with us now and throw in your 2 cents. And your 2 cents is worth a lot more than 2 cents with inflation. So,
And we should become conscious, speakers.
Push the wrong button there. I'm going to bring in some friends here to get this conversation going on the power of words, the importance of words. I already have the awesome Will Keller with me, and the wonderful Leslie Powers, and the honorable and super editor Brandon Spencer. Thanks for joining me, guys. Glad to see you. Glad you could pop in. Thanks. I'm glad you made it. Leslie, I know you're having a little bit of computers, doing something wacky. Guess you got it working. You look beautiful tonight.
Thanks for
And
having
Will,
us.
I heard you saved some cats tonight from the heat.
Yeah, my daughter Violet and I, we saved some kittens. Found them earlier in the morning. It was already getting 90, so we took them in. Mom wasn't around, and just 15 minutes ago, we kind of reunited the kittens with her mom. So successful.
Right on. You're a hero in so many ways.
I
Well, Will,
appreciate
we got Fred with us, we got Derek, and we got Chris Nelson, all star cast with us. So I'll let you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on our talk on words, etymology, clarity. Will, if you want to throw in any thoughts on that, and then just pass it on to whoever you want to next, and we'll hopefully we'll hear from everybody. Just kind of pass it back and forth as casual and easy as we want to go with it.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for having us, Chris. It's always a pleasure to be on here. The episode last week that you guys did, The Power of Words, it was fantastic. Everyone brought powerful points on this vital topic of words, right? Language. This is the crucial underbelly of society, and it's our communication, right? This is the first step of the trivium is grammar. Words have extreme power, vibratory power. They can be objective in nature, meaning they have a concise meaning, getting down to that origin of a word. And this is all about decoding and conveying objective reality. This is where words come into play. This is also why the obfuscation from the social engineers want to um, deceive, and the relativists and the revisionists of history always attack language and words. If you cut the head off from language and grammar, you've already infiltrated the level of available information, and you take down the level of communication between people. And this is what we're here to do as one great workers, as content creators, as truth seekers, modern philosophers. This is what we're here to do, is convey messages through the power of words. And I've said many times, you can have a full-blown awakening to what is going on in the world just by understanding the etymology, the origins, and the true definitions of words, compared to, the modern colloquial understanding and how people perceive words nowadays. Um, all the great philosophers, the Stoics, the Platonists, always put an emphasis on language and words right after metaphysics. It was right there. So you guys did a killer job. You added a lot to it. It's one I highly recommend people go check out. So I'll pass it over to Brandon.
Thanks, Will, and thank you all for joining this wonderful conversation. And I have to thank Chris Nelson because without his work, I wouldn't have not have come into those deeper understanding when it comes to language, words, and like the concept when it comes to symbols, because words are symbols, and the metaphysical aspect that comes with that. So I'm always proud to honor his work. And of course, Mark Pastor's work and the great teachers, work who come, have before us, because that's what it's all about, is being more clear and bringing more clarity, not just to, like ourselves and reality, but to our understanding. And one thing or one word that always brings clarity, when you use it, is saying the word no. And that's one thing that I wanted to talk about, because I talked about understanding the importance of the definition of words. But when you say the word no, you're taking a stand. And that's really what we are all trying to encourage and inspire people to do, is to start taking a stand in whatever way you can. And when you say the word no, you are actually bringing more power to yourself, because you're saying, hey, I'm not going to let whatever happen, this is, my line in the sand, and once you cross it, I'm going to take a stand. And therefore, I'm going to be in a position of power to do what I have to do to maybe stop your coercion, to maybe stop your threats, to stop your violence. So when we are talking about being clear, I think the biggest thing that we can be clear on is using the word no when it comes to the slave system, when it comes to tyrants, when it comes to authoritarianism. Using the word no, like there's no more clearer word than saying the word no. Because when you tell someone no, you're saying, okay, I'm done. One more inch, and I may react, I may use self-defense. So we need to start using this word no more than ever, because too many people are still going along with the system. They're not refusing to use their words, to use their voice, to use their speech to communicate. And that's why we have this saying, like silence pretty much is a means to obfuscate, and it's a means of distortion, because you're not using the most powerfulest gift that you was given, your voice, to say no. So there's a lot of power in just that one word.
Brandon, thanks for saying that. It reminds me, I was just going back through our video. At the end of this, I'll probably play it if we have time. I did a condensed version of our talk over the week, and you at one point in it said, sometimes it's good to just shut the fuck up. And I was thinking about that. It's something I've been working on ever since I've been speaking publicly. We podcast and you speak. It's good to talk, but you can also hear when people just start talking and they're not really saying anything. And we're always working on being more concise and not just spewing, but getting to a point, making it concise, simplify the profound, the way that Will likes to say it. I think that's a great way to share that. And I wanted to just interject, because I forgot I wanted to announce this in the beginning for folks listening. There is a type of silence and shutting the fuck up that sucks. And that's when you don't help. And that's when you're not part of the change that's happening in the world, the people that are speaking out, trying to bring this truth forward. If you don't feel like you have that voice, you can take the time to, let's say, transcribe what other people are saying. Like, take this episode, download it, transcribe it, put it on the Substack, add pictures. There's a lot of ways to help talk about natural law publicly, and we all need help. Those of us that are content creators, it's a hell of a work and burden to get this stuff all published, and we need your help. We have a lot of jobs that aren't filled. We need people that are publishing this stuff in different forms and in different channels. And anything of mine is free to share. Copy it all you want and get it out there. That's why I'm making it, and that's why it's all for free. And you should be ashamed of yourself if you understand this work and you haven't done anything. Then you should not be shutting the fuck up. You should be speaking the fuck up. And I'll just say that, and I'm going to try to be a little more quiet from here on out, because I really want to hear all these wonderful stars we have here. Leslie, are you ready to go next? Otherwise, we'll go to Fred.
Yes, sure. Hello, everybody. It's really wonderful to be here. I was really excited after listening to last week's show, and it stimulated a lot of thoughts. So I'm going to try to be concise with some of my thoughts to share. And I'm going to pop off of a couple things that both, Will and Brandon said about cat. The vibration of words and the power of words as a boundary. And I also want to, bring up that I think that we can understand the Hermetic principles through words. We can learn about the Hermetic principles, and we can execute or activate consciously the Hermetic principles through the use of words, right? Through the power of mentalism, through understanding correspondence and, similarities, metaphors, similes. Words have vibration. We can think about seed syllables, both from like the runes have seed sounds. Syllables make up words. So words are actually complex, uses of syllables, which ultimately have a vibration. And certain sounds, certain words have different vibrations, higher vibrations, right? The Bible says in John 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So it is through speaking that word, thinking and feeling that word, that all is created. And that the word I am, with that phrase, you invoke your own God self right here and now. And so this key words, which, and I'm referring, actually, I'm kind of reading from a book, I Am Affirmations from Peter Mount Shasta, where I'm an hour south of Mount Shasta, where there's the teachings of the I Am. And so there's, I think, some seeds of truth within there. And this piece of the word, I think, is really worth sharing. He says that this I is the twofold activity of the father fire electronic will aspect. And the am is the activity of the mother earth magnetic love aspect, both of which must function together to manifest the full creative power of the I am activity. So it's this gender principle, and in effect, that gives the energy of creation, and where we can activate the power of word. And so this can be through our affirmations, our positive use of words. And he also describes that this meditation of affirmation really needs to be amplified through the use of 4 aspects: verbal, our voice; visualizing, using our third eye; feeling, bringing emotion; and action. So it's that alignment of thought, feeling, and action that is, activates the power of word. And so the vibrations, again, could go back to mantra, seed syllables, ancient traditions, really activating the power of sound, vibration, frequency, using polarity, rhythm, all of the aspects of the Hermetic principles to activate and increase our consciousness and our connection to the divine source, right, through love and the spirit. So that's all I'll say now. Fred, you want to go next?
So thank you, Chris, for the invitation. By the way, I appreciate it. Words for me are magic. This is why we're using words as spell. This is why we are spelling the truth on our own words, on our own personality and character. So what I wanted to add is to add on Brendan's commentary. It's words are double-edged swords. We do not put enough emphasis on the education on how to use the languages, and by experience is French and English language are very different, but kind of the same at the same time. But this is hard to understand the little nuances of the language and the way and the intention behind the words and all the meta behind it. So there's many factors that we have to look onto and its influence, and that's why I'm keep on saying that it's magic. Magic is influence. So the influence, words have started wars. Words have been used as a resolution. So there's 2 aspects to this incredible study that is the language as such, and we have to respect it and use it with humility, and yes, we have to be a fewer words when we're not doing the great work, when we're not doing it on the internet. We have to be careful about and not waste, because this is precious energy. Talking is using your force, your energy to project what you think, what you feel. So there's no separation there. It's everywhere, and we are submerged. We are you know we're I'm losing my word, by the way. We're swimming into this sea of plasma, of energy, and that's why I said we have to be very careful with the word we use, the intention behind it, and the desire, because intentions and desires are two different things. So this is what I want to add to this.
Thanks, Fred. I thought of when you were talking, how many fights and wars have started with the words, "What did you just say?" Right? It's just a couple words and a whole bunch of shit happened over and over and over all through history. So, like you're saying, they're precious and important, man. A couple of the wrong ones can lead to death and who knows what else, and far worse. So, Chris Nelson, thanks so much for joining us today. You got something on the tip of your tongue there you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I got a few things I could share.
Right
It's
on.
good to be amongst this Ennead of thinkers and speakers. Thanks a lot, Brandon, for those nice words. Glad to have put out the work that could provide some insights to help people in their understanding. And yeah, I guess I could continue with magic. I think Chris mentioned it, was the first one to mention it last week. And that words are magic, because just by speaking, you can influence others in a positive or negative way, as was just mentioned, starting wars or whatever. And an interesting thing, I mentioned the Ennead, like the Ennead of gods in ancient Egypt. Well, in ancient Egypt, there were two of the gods or goddesses that were um, originally foundational concepts. There were only two. One of them is Ma'at, which most people know, representative of morality, justice, righteousness, law, moral law, obviously, and other things related to balance and equilibrium and measurement. And the other one is Heka, and Heka was the concept of magic. So that's an important, I guess, a conceptual origin from Egypt, because even our alphabet comes from Egypt, and there's a lot of things that originate in Egypt. And as Brandon was saying, I've mentioned in my work that if you think of it in the derivation of how we started to communicate, you could say we started to grunt, or we'd point at a tree and go like, and then this was and g or whatever, and then eventually those develop into different sounds. But when we amplify that communicative aspect, and we communicate by writing it down, the the most logical form of communication you can come up with is pictographic representation. So to represent a tree is you draw a tree. You don't come up with the abstraction of individual letters that compound into words in order to represent a tree. That's an abstraction of a later derivation and conceptualization that the power of our human consciousness can employ. But at first is a pictogram or pictograph, and that's what hieroglyphics were. So whether Sumer um, derived their language before ancient Egypt, I believe that the origins of the hieroglyphics in Egypt is what came first, whether that came from Atlantis or whatever before. But that's logically what came first in my mind. And I view Egypt as older than Sumer, but I might be wrong. But those are just my beliefs, just based on the language. That cuneiform is a more abstraction of lines and wedges, and it's creating a more of an abstraction that's a later development than a simple pictogram. And so I place a lot of emphasis on Egypt for the source of many ideas, and apophysis is one related to what Brandon was saying too, for no, um, because no is the negation of something, and that's what apophysis is, and that relates to apophysinisis, and isis relates to ma'at, as I went through in my latest presentation on morality. Um, and interesting, we've been talking about the God said, "Let there be light," or the God said He created with words. So "Let there be light" was the words He used, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. These different symbolic and metaphorical and allegorical representations trying to elucidate certain concepts. And if you look at logos, it relates to, that's what is supposed to be the Word of God, was logos, and logos is also the origin. Well, the root of logos is leg or lek, which in lecture, so reading. In French, the word for reading is lecture, so that's reading. And if you're giving a lecture, you're speaking. So these all relate to logos, and this power of the word, and this magical ability that we have to influence others and thereby affect and transform the world around us. The logos is also lek or leg in the Proto-Indo-European, and allegedly where it comes from, is also the root of, when you look into ratio. So that's like ratio one thing in relation to another. So that brings you to balance and equilibrium related to Ma'at, and calculation and reason and logic. It's also the direct origin, the root for logic. So all these things relate to thinking and our ability to engage in discourse and communicate with others and influence others. So it's speech and language is very powerful. If you think of where we are now and what we would be without speech, I don't think we'd be very far without speech and the invention of language, especially because that allows speech to carry on the memory that's only instantiated in an instant, and we can recollect things from the past. Um, by being able to write it down, we can amplify that power of language in order to carry messages forward in time, even long after we're dead, and ideas and concepts can propagate forward to future generations to build upon and improve and further amplify what we can create of our world, rather than creating darkness. We can create with the light. And the magic, um, related to magic also, is the word abracadabra. People might not know this, but I wrote about it like 10 years ago or something. That abracadabra means you create as has been said, you create as you say. And that relates to a concept in also ancient Egypt called ma'akeru, which ma as in true, and keru is you speak. So you speak the truth. So abracadabra is like when the magician says abracadabra with his wand and the hat, and then abracadabra, and then the rabbit comes out of the hat. So he says, "I'm going to make a rabbit come out of this hat." Abracadabra, poof, and then the rabbit comes out of the hat, because he's creating as he speaks. And that's again emphasizing this power. The true magic is that we create as we speak, and that's in alignment with the concept of the trivium methodology, where what you think and what you say, you follow through with your words. And in the movie Scarface, I got two things in my life: I got my balls and my words, as he says. And so that's the word. Your word is supposed to be where your honor comes from and your honesty, and that's where trust is built. Because if you break your word, then people won't trust you and they won't want to associate with you. So this helps engender a positive social dynamic between people, is having that ma'akeru, that being true of voice, being speaking things that are true, or doing your best to not willfully deceive. You can say things that are false unknowingly, and that can happen to all of us. We can all be wrong. And it relates to, or relate one last thing, the magician and the sorcerer related to abracadabra, because you create as you say. But a deceiver, what we can refer to as Mark Passio instantiated in the concept of a magician and sorcerer, is that a magician will use their words to influence others in accordance with a higher will, a higher purpose, what is a truer will in alignment with what is true. And the sorcerer will just try to influence others for the goal of manipulation and deception so that they can gain at the expense of others. And so when you look at abracadabra, well, the magician is employing abracadabra, but the sorcerer is corrupting it because they're not creating as they say. They say one thing and do another. They're not in alignment. Their words are not in alignment with their actions. So I'll end it there. Pass it to Derek.
Yeah, Derek, you did bring up abracadabra last week too. I remembered that in the video. You did a good job, but I like that other. What was say that again one more time, Chris? What where it comes from? The akaruk. How do you say that?
Yeah, ma'a keru. So it's M-A-A.
Ma'akaru.
So that's the ma'at is truth, and then or reality or morality, and you have ma, which is just true or real or moral. So ma'a keru, and keru is K-H-E-R-U, ma'a keru, and that's true of voice. So it relates to abracadabra and all that stuff.
Sweet, that's neat. And I think that points to one thing that I just want to point out is you don't realize the time we're in how important it is. But when you look back at the things that are influencing us now, whether it was Thomas Paine or Lysander Spooner, these people in time wrote things down or said them aloud or recorded them, and now it's making a massive impact on our ability to speak and share with others. So imagine what we're doing now is that important going forward for others. It's crucial. Okay, Derek, you're up, brother.
Oh man, where to start? I'm just, yeah, so happy to be. Hey, my friends, like, hey, just listening to y'all. It's just great. And I didn't want to take up too much time or space because, obviously with the One Great Work Warriors, a handful of us in the chat are already up in here. And it's almost 4 in the morning over here. So after I spit my piece and hear Jerry, I think I'm gonna cut out, and I would love for anyone else who would like to jump on because I know there's limited space, right, Chris? If they want to come on after I depart, please. I encourage folks to step up. But yeah, because we're all in correspondence, right? Take it back to that good old natural law, the second hermetic principle. And Leslie, I really love what you had to say, by the way, and running down some of that. And yeah, like what are we doing here right now? We're all in communication. We're all corresponding with each other. So yeah, yeah, I think I touched upon this in the last video, but just to reiterate, because it hasn't been said yet, so it wouldn't be redundant in this episode. As far as just like, yeah, like as above, so below, as within, so without, so what's in here? How is, our inner dialogue? How is the language that we speak to ourselves, first and foremost? And so it's just, from the micro to the macro. What is being rippled out from in here to out there? Because a lot of people are just projecting a lot of unconscious, illiterate gibberish, if you will, like those babies babbling in the land of Babylon, right, Chris? Like, as I mentioned before, and yeah, Will, I really appreciate you checking that out and what you had to say, like half an hour ago at this point. It's 3:33 in the morning. Holy shit. Good timing. And yeah, I want to sincerely apologize. I didn't really bring a whole lot of rhymes that you were hoping for, maybe, but but what, Chris?
We'll have a sublime time without those rhymes. Don't you worry one bit.
Yeah, maybe next time I'll make up for it with a little bit of double time. But
No crime.
Chris Nelson, what you had to say before was hecka cool, man. And can you real quick? What was the deal with Hecka again? It's like,
Well, Heka is just so you have a bunch of gods and goddesses that are representations of, as I view it, qualities and aspects of ourselves, to externalize them in a concept so that we can reflect upon them, reflect parts of ourselves outwards as gods, goddesses, and concepts in order to look at them as an externalized idea rather than just retain them inside, and also able to communicate them to other people, and through that symbolism gain a deeper understanding by corresponding things, bouncing things off each other, and people can share that as like an archetype of, or a mix of archetype, or a mix of symbols that come together to represent, it could be many different things or dual aspects. And well, the gods and goddesses, there were only two that represented two foundational concepts, and that's Ma'at and Heka. They were both personified and anthropomorphized, externalized as gods. Heka was a god, and he had, and he's related to Ma'at because he had the symbol of the Ka, which was the upright arms, and that's Ka, and that's supposed to be an aspect of like a spirit of ourselves, and it's upright actions, um, the essence of what we do, our deeds. And so Heka had on his head, he had the Ka on his head, and that was the representation of as a statue figure for Heka. So it relates to Maat. But those were the two like foundational concepts in the Egyptian lore. Was before the world existed, there was just you know uh, darkness, there was chaos, and to create the world, there needed to be something to put the world on. So that was in one of the mythopoetic narratives was, well, Ma'at is the plinth, so Ma'at came first as a counter to chaos because she is order. And then the world was placed on the plinth, the mound, which is Ma'at. So she's the foundation for everything. That's how the foundation of how we're supposed to create in our lives as well is to build our actions upon the foundation of Ma'at. And Heka was the other concept. So these two foundational concepts before the world was created, before existence, was Ma'at and Heka. And they're the only two gods or goddesses that are represented by those foundational concepts.
Damn. Yeah. Thank you so much. And yeah, a proper foundation and those proper codes of consciousness are quite important. And yeah, to establish the proper grammar to express that and all that. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much. Yeah. Sorry, I got caught up in that California slang. I'm out here in France. They don't speak that lingo over here. So when I hear something, you know what I mean? So, and that kind of sucks because, there's so many, like Ebonics and other different forms of saying certain things, and people have their accents, which can be misinterpreted from other people who don't have like that just like more open-mindedness and like worldly mindedness, if you will, of just okay, like you've traveled around, you understand like people speak, there's language barriers even within the English language, just depending on how people pronounce the words and all that stuff and their accent behind it. And people might misinterpret an accent as if it's someone has an attitude about something when no, they're just like that's how they speak kind of thing, like but anyways, it brings me to the last point I want to bring up, and I want to pass it off to Sarah, is that yeah, language has been used against us, and I'm not going to reiterate a lot of stuff that I said in previous videos and all that, but with the language being part of the battlefield of the divide and conquer, and yada yada, that all these tactics are used against us. It's really important for us to understand like how words have been weaponized and all these things, and there's like parasitic phrases and all the Orwellian doublespeak of the inversions of meanings, which is why we try to emphasize etymology a good amount. And yeah, so yeah, with weaponized words, I mean the real basic one is just like a conspiracy theorist, right? People don't understand what a conspiracy is, of just like conspirare, of like breathing together on whatever the endeavor type of thing, and to yeah, l'esprit, mon ami, Fred, what's up with that shit, and like all these things, just breath, spirit, all it all ties in together. So it's just a shame that we were not taught this in school. Of course, not the trivium. In even some teachings of the trivium, they have things out of order or whatever. But yeah, like the parasitic phrases that we just like are programmed and conditioned when we grow up, and like just with the social media and the poop culture, right? As Mari West likes to say, of just like, what the fuck is all this programming, right? And how are are we seeing people, interact with each other, and what are they talking about, and like their train of thought transcribed, through their vocal cords, and what's coming out of that based off of what they saw on TV the night before, and this and that. And you could just see certain patterns and certain, like even cadences of speech. Even in movies, you see like, movies and the writing, it's all like based off of, what the fuck's going on in Los Angeles and all that shit, right? But yes, it's important for us to understand like our thoughts, our train of thought, our articulation of our thoughts and the words that we construct in our mind before we. I mean, just having that proper inner dialogue helps out so much. Like having that good relationship with yourself and that self-talk. If a lot of coaches say, but yeah, breaking out of these parasitic things helps out a tremendous amount, and it kind of breaks the cycle of kind of like these knee-jerk reaction things, because sometimes you say you blurt something out, and then like in the heat of the moment, and then it just perpetuates into just a negative feedback loop type of thing. So I just wanted to throw that out there for folks to take heed, because this type of shit, the bickering and whatever the fuck, is on all fucking levels, unfortunately. Infighting on whatever kind of network type of thing sometimes. So we need to be wise with our words, my friends. And I really appreciate everyone's presence here. And yeah, Sarah Cross, congratulations on your new show coming up on Revolution Radio. Gonna be chilling with Crib Rick a little bit more, huh? That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. Can we hear you, Sarah? Say something.
Hey,
Oh
can you
yeah,
hear
you're
me?
coming in. Cool. Let's hear from you. You got something you'd like to share about the words and what everybody said? Thanks so much, Derek. By the way.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. And I don't know a lot about what I could add because I would have said everything all of you would have said. But I do really appreciate like Chris, what you were talking about just makes me want to go and do more research on like ancient gods and stuff, which is like a middle school hobby of mine because it's just interesting, even if you don't really use it, you do anything with the information, it's still it's kind of where a lot of what we are as culture is now come from is our history and what we've taken from it, what we absorbed from it. But especially with the what Leslie pulled out from the verse, the Bible verse, and that's actually like a really good one. And it's one of those things that you can look at and use it as an example, because like you're saying, words are being used as a weapon. And it's very easy to do that when people don't understand how to speak properly or understand what they're saying when they're speaking. They just blurt stuff out, out of context without thinking. So even using the power, or I wouldn't even call it a power, I'd call it a skill set to practice of thought, emotion, and action with just your regular daily lives and using it as like a normal thing, whether you're speaking or not, builds up the skill of being able to, think and speak properly and use it properly. So,
Like a
yeah,
thought
I mean,
entrepreneur.
huh?
Like your own thought entrepreneur. We think of entrepreneur as only being, in the field of finances, but you have to entrepreneur the way you think, and they don't teach you that in school. Sorry to interrupt
You
you, but
just
that You inspired
No,
me.
that's okay. It's just, channeling the inner detective discernment within yourself, and really thinking things through before you really put something out there, because even once you've said something, you've said it, and once you've written something, you've written it. I mean, you could take it back, but once action takes place, there's really just history written. You can't really take an action back. So you want to be really thoughtful or really particular and just clear about your thoughts and emotions. And too many people are out there going emotion action instead of thought, emotion, and action. They're missing one of the first most important. That's the I am. That's the mind. That's where it starts. So, I mean, everything else I would have said or I would have agreed with. And the only other thing I would add, if you guys want me to later on, I was looking at some history, some ancient history of origins of language and the written and spoken word. So, but I can leave it there for now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, we can circle back to that. Um, Jerry, did you have any comments off of what you've just heard you wanted to pop in on?
Too many, but I'm practicing being brief.
Real quick,
Sarah,
Jerry, sorry to interrupt. If James wants to pop on and there's no room, I'll allow that to happen for sure.
I think there's still a spot.
Oh, is there?
I don't know. Let's ask him. If James, if you're out there, let us know if you're able to get in or not.
All right, but Jerry, continue. Sorry to ruin the flow on that.
no worries, brother, man. Shit, 3 a.m. in there. Crazy man, doing the great work. So, yeah, I was gonna ask you, Sarah, how long will it take you to break that down? Because you got me curious now.
I've got like 2.5 pages. That's all shorthand, and some of you may have already know this information as well. So,
All right, we'll circle back to you, I guess. Yeah, everybody made great points. I think action is what really rung out to me. That's something I'm working on. It's just taking the action, not being hesitant, and definitely aligning the thoughts, emotions, and action, right? But I actually wrote some things down earlier today as I was watching a sales video on YouTube, and it had to do with words. So I'll share that. Um, Basically, it had to do with our belief system. So people believe, for example, I'm not good at blank. And I think what we have to do is turn that around, that phrase, and say, I am not good at blank yet. And then like start working on the change the phrases, your mindset, because it starts in the mindset. Hey, James. So that's just one point I wanted to make. Destroy the belief systems that are dangerous. And so I guess you have to pay attention to your thoughts. And I guess working hard on working smart. Working smart, because if someone is really good at words, you can also be good at words. You just have to practice. So that's something I wanted to share. I think that like was related to this conversation. So yeah, super brief. What's up, James? I'll pass you the baton, the speaking stick.
Hey, on that note, Jerry's a perfect example. You can go back to our One Great Work Warriors meetings and presentations that we've been putting out for more than a year, and you look at his first times, and you can tell Jerry was really struggling with getting in front of that camera and speaking clearly and everything because it was very new to him. But he forced through, he pushed through, and got better and better. And now, like, he's doing an excellent job being concise and coming up with good things to say, and having bullet points. And so he's a testament to how possible that is in a very short time. Thanks, Jerry, for your like willingness and encouragement to keep doing the work you're doing and getting so much better at it. I really appreciate what you've done. I'm super proud of it.
Thank you, brother.
James, thanks for joining us. I'd like to hear a little from you, and then I have one post I want to share from YouTube and kind of get people's thoughts on it. And then after that, we'll come back to you, Sarah, if you want to share us a little bit about the history. James, you're up.
Hey guys, am I coming through okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Coming
are.
loud and clear. What's up, James?
I missed probably 30 minutes of what was going on, and then I remembered the stream was happening, so I decided to crash the party. So excuse me if I'm repeating anybody, but so the topic is power of words. I wrote down a little blurb here. Speech is the most powerful tool. Okay. Words and written language carry a vibrational energy that has the power to change hearts and minds. All good ideas are communicated through words, both spoken and written. All bad ideas are communicated similarly. The battlefield of the mind, okay? The mind that believes in authority, the mind that believes in the perpetuation of slavery, is a battlefield where language is the ammunition. This train of thought led me to think about the first iteration, the first language to ever create a word that meant freedom. It was a Sumerian text and I believe it's pronounced Amagi or Amagi. It's AMA-GI. They created this word freedom because they needed to find a way to describe the thing that was stolen from them when they were enslaved. Before this word was invented, this is just how their society was. They didn't need the word because that's just how it was. So when we talk about the power of words, man, what a powerful tool, weapon to be able to create something to describe the thing that was stolen from you, and it just kind of makes me really upset when I start thinking about the way that, especially on online forums and different platforms and whatever, the way that speech is being suppressed and censored, because this is the most peaceful way for us to remain in a condition of any sort of condition of freedom, even if it's a very, very small amount of it that we have. We're not totally in total enslavement yet, and hopefully that day never comes. But if we're not allowed to speak and communicate good ideas, then it will happen. And as far as anybody out there, and you know me, I'm always a little combative, but as far as anybody out there that thinks that people like us, all we do is talk, well, yeah, that's good enough, isn't it? Because this is how we reach people. This is how we make sure that the ideas of freedom and liberty, they don't die on some real bloody battlefield. And like I've already stated, through the communication of all these great ideas, we really do a fantastic job at preserving what little freedom we have, and possibly even helping it grow and expand for future generations. Maybe we get to enjoy a little bit more of it in our lifetimes, but preservation of freedom for future generations is an extremely important thing to keep in mind. When I think about the Kybalion, one of the opening phrase of the Kybalion is, it was just on the tip of my tongue, but it's something along the lines of, "Oh, don't let the flame die out." Something along those lines. I'm trying to remember exactly what it says, but I'll paraphrase instead. And what that means is that that work, the Kybalion or any other work, was written down as a way to preserve that knowledge so that way the future could have access to it. Every single invention that has ever been created was first an idea, and then those ideas had to be communicated out into the world via speech, illustration, written word, and then actually created and manifested into reality through the use of different tools and materials. So not only is the words important, but communication also have, I guess, is a huge implication with even the term words, right? But maybe I'm being a little long-winded here, but I just wanted to come in and say something along those lines and tell y'all that I've been thinking about y'all a lot lately, and I'm glad that a lot of people that I consider important are here in the same room tonight. And I'm glad to see all of you. So
Well, I'm glad you joined us, James. And there's a lot to um, what we're trying to do, because there's a million ways to get lost and confused. And we can see this web of confusion on the net in everything we do. And there's constantly all these words being splattered all over the screen. And some of them bring up emotions, and people take things the wrong way, and all this type of thing. And with all the difficulty we have communicating with people, this is a very important topic. So one thing I wanted to share is there was, when we posted the One Great Work Warriors episode last week, there was someone who came on, a couple people commented that I thought were interesting comments. And one in particular I wanted to put out there because I thought it might stimulate some of your guys' thoughts. And so I'm curious what anyone thinks about this. This was Nemo Jones. He said he was going to try to be here tonight, probably wasn't able to make it. I think it's a he. And it says here, I'll put it in the thing. What are the best examples of words that have changed meaning over time? I'm very curious about this, as it seems so perilously close to relativism and even nihilism. Is there meaning or only meaninglessness? And in context, someone else had posted before that on that same channel about how words, it said, thing is, there's no correct definition, as word meanings can change a lot over time, short or a long time. Semantic drift, they called it, which I thought was kind of a good little pun. So I thought that might stimulate some of your thoughts. And let's try to go through. I'd like to hear everybody say something one more time if possible. But let's try to keep it a little shorter. We'd like to go another 30, 40 minutes or so. And I'd really like to hear from everyone. So I think, Will, you'd be up next. But we don't have to go in that particular order.
Okay, cool. Yeah, everyone had fantastic points. It's amazing. You get all these minds together and we're exchanging words. This, like you said, James, this is the battlefield. This is what we're doing. Words can program the mind. They do program the mind, for sure. It all depends on what direction it's going to go. This is also why context matters, and understanding the etymology, the root of the word and that language. You know, the English language doesn't have a feminine and masculine counterparts, unlike Spanish, French, and many other, the majority of languages, right? So there's English is kind of this bastardized version, this conglomeration of all these different languages, origins. So keeping it to the origin of the word, where its true definition, its true meaning, gives profound clarity. So I absolutely, words do have meaning, and it's important to understand what the word means. I mean, this is the whole pyramid of slavery. It starts with the words. Corporate sorcery, word magic, all of this kind of stuff. It's simple words as rights. What is a right? Or human? Or here's one, a word that has changed: freedom or anarchy. That's probably, you know, one of the biggest ones in our realm that we talk about. Anarchy, most people would say chaos, and we obviously know that it means no rulers, no masters, no slaves. And another word I would say that has changed all over the place throughout the years is God. Now, some words, the origin, the exact origin of a word can be up for question. God is one of those, but there's a large amount of evidence showing that it's proto Indo-European, and the word God, G-U-T, from the proto Indo-European, means to invoke. So even that word, it's very similar to Hebrew, you know, the tetragrammaton, or something like Derek would say, the tetragrammaton. So it's good to know these origins and these definitions. And James, you said it's ammo. That's exactly what it is. This is true education, understanding the vibration, because that's what it really is. And this is how it influences reality and influences other individuals through that vibration. And you know, the voice, my last point, it's a bridge of the metaphysical and the physical, because you're using thoughts and you're mixing it with emotions, and then you are speaking it as an action. So you have all three in that combination. It's a burst of magic. Absolutely. That's what words are. And
hopefully with a huge dash of intent in there as well. Intention is an important ingredient.
Well, the intention is the thought.
Sure.
For sure. Yep. That's the thought. That's your intent. And then energy and motion. That's energy, mentation, and then the physical component of speaking it out. So, yeah, I'll pass it on to Brandon.
The word conspiracy too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I do see it as a kind of relativistic aspect, because if we have been, slaves pretty much since the dawn of mankind, then they have controlled language since the dawn of mankind, and therefore, as they like to build things up or create things, build them up, and then destroy it in their sick psychopathic mindset, then that comes with change, because that's what they do is they, how they build societies, and then they build them up, and then they change them by way of, how destruction. That's just a sick game that they play. And I see it as a means of relativistic, because it keeps us in a state, or it creates more confusion, when you start to change these definitions of words, or, because that's what we are seeing today is, we've had certain words that had a meaning and definitions. And then therefore, as decades pass on, and then once that next, generation comes, they start to change these definitions, change these meanings. Then therefore, is that really creating more clarity, or is that creating more of a distortion? And that's really what I see it is creating more of a distortion, trying to deliberately create confusion. And we know that, confusion is one of the negative, is on that negative chart on the natural law, health expressions. And one thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'll be brief, is when I first heard Michael Tessarion talk about we need to be simple, illiterate. I thought he was just talking about, like logos and symbols, first. But as I progress in my own thinking and consciousness, now I'm starting to see it's not just, like the logos and symbols, but we need to be symbol illiterate in the words too, because if the words are symbols, which they are, because the letters are symbols, and we just conform them, so they're pretty much just sigils, then we need to understand those. And what does it mean to be literate? It means to be educated. Well, what does a symbol mean? It means to cast something out, to throw something, together. So the things that we cast out with our vibratory, energy, with our voice, with our words, with our communication, our speech, our language as a means to communicate, we need to be educated in what we say. Therefore, we can bring about the best, results. And then therefore we're not creating unconsciously. Because when we are symbol, illiterate, then we are creating consciously. So I'll pass it on to Leslie.
All right. Gosh, that's such great points that all integrating together in my mind. So the warriors talked about, and specifically Brandon today, about how words create definition and boundaries. The use of the word no is a boundary. It's a very powerful word and words create boundaries that then can help create definition and separation, right? So they define our life experiences. So that is one pole of the way that words separate, where it can be good, where it can be powerful and important. But that separation can also have a downside. So words can separate people. Words can separate us inside ourselves. So they can take us or things out of the awareness or the context of our interconnectedness as well, our interdependence. So, for example, a tree doesn't exist without the sun or the soil or the water. The richness of all the elements determines the robustness of a tree. A tree doesn't exist by itself, right? And it's the same with people. So we have this polarity, and that can be manipulated and used against us. So when we talk about mind control and the idea of division, and division being used through words to divide us within and between us, among us, it's that dark sorcery. And so with like satanic ritual abuse or trauma-based mind control, there's a manipulation of words through the understanding of psychology in dividing people's consciousness, right? And planting seeds through words to a fragment of a person. And it's through words or other kinds of signals that then open up that consciousness to create behaviors, right? Often that are not coming from a person's true will, but that have been programmed and fed through the use of words and the division of our internal mind. So this idea of integration and understanding oneness while also understanding the individual, right? And the value of every sound, every word, right? And being aware of it. Rick brought a point last time about, he said, kind of pointed out this irony. We are saying you can't really change the definition of words, but that's what people are doing. That's what people are trying to do. And that is the delusion. That is the sorcery. That is what creates the distortion and the confusion that Brandon's talking about, that then creates further division. So there's danger, right, in our lack of awareness, our lack of consciousness, and our lack of integration within ourselves and among each other or between each other. So I'll stop there. Go ahead, Fred.
When it comes to exposing the walls of the prison and all the collaterals and all the things that have spawned from the underbelly of ignorance, what we have to do is rebuild, and using language as a healing tool, and have it, and in the context of shadow working or introspection, we have to relearn how to communicate with ourselves, and taking boundaries and respecting. And when we have, and it's all coming back to the principle of correspondence. So if we want to better the communication and fortify the network between people, because it is a network, it's just because it's energy, then we have to treat ourselves well. We have this inner conversation that people have. Yes, we have psychic noises and ego driven thoughts that are trying to break us and make us stop or abandon what we're doing. What we have to fight against, this voice, this inner voice that we have inside of us. I know most people have it. We still have it. I'm even after years of shadow working and changing my dialogue with myself and working to the grammary and the vocabulary. We still have to struggle because we never suffered enough. It's incredible how much wasted energy is happening even on social media, even with the people you're working with. There's a flow of this is a stagnation of even here in Quebec, particularly. I'm going to take it as an example. They are always oversimplifying the language. This is the reform that they're doing. They're taking the powers from people. It's the ability to communicate, and being right and being truthful, and not wasting words, not wasting energy into egoic endeavors. We have to. This is only a matter of care. This is what we have to learn: how to care for our language, care for our brothers and sisters. And the only thing that we can do now is being careful for what we wish for. Do we want to build on shaky foundations, or we want to build back on better grounds? Chris,
Well said.
you're on, brother.
Thanks much, Fred. I was just showing this good post we just got from our friend at Co-Create Vitality, Cavalia, and she was talking about the yoga mantras and chanting that help reprogram the word spells. Something you said, Fred, that really struck me is the preciousness of our time and energy. And you're saying, like, don't waste it. Like, there's people that will just jump on a chat or thing and just spew out some weird negative comments. Like, why are you wasting your energy and my time and my energy if you don't have something productive or constructive to say? Why? Don't waste. So
It's a
good
mirror
point.
into
Thanks
their
for
internal self.
chaos, right?
Yes.
Internal chaos and confusion on what they're doing with their time. They have no idea.
Yeah.
And be impeccable with your word. Thank you, Leslie. The 4 agreements. That's a beautiful quote to bring up. Anybody else want to pop in on that topic that we've been discussing? Like how the words have changed and.
Yeah, I had that written down real quick. I mean, USA, all the way. But by the way, I'm not a big fan of the word soccer, even though I understand some of the meaning behind it, and they were kind of skittish about the British and all these things. And it's like, like we broke away from we're trying to get away from the crown. We're trying to hold it down over in this new town or nation, if you will, right? And yeah, I understand some of the historicity behind that and some of the motivations to change some of the wordings within the English language. We're talking about English. We're all speaking this language, right? But yeah, that's just like a silly example of just like sports, right? They, invited some and invented some new, bread and circus for, people to be entertained by up until this day. And now there's like fucking, I don't know, like all sorts of weird shit. But anyways, so sometimes, yeah, like we might have been there before. Or just okay. So words change over time. Okay, yeah, we can look into the etymology and etim online whatever.com org and look up whatever word, and you can see the progress of from the origin to present day, and how the real definition got lost along the way. Does that mean that, what we're saying right now is, false? Well, it really depends on certain things, and like how serious are we really going to be taking speech, just life in general? Like, what the fuck? People want to invent whatever the fuck and identify with whoever the hell, or like invent whatever fucking pronouns these days. This is out of fucking control. It's fucking bullshit. And I'm not tired of it. I'm not sick of it, because I don't manifest those types of words into, calling myself like I am this. No, I'm not. I'm fucking fed up. Like my patience is lost with the utter ridiculousness. And like, if people do not understand how bad shit is right fucking now, wait till AI augments this shit, tenfold in maybe not even a fucking year. So please, people, like, step your fucking life game up, yo. Straight the fuck up. And it starts from right fucking here. The first eye to recognize and realize, like, people be living real lies that they tell themselves on a daily fucking basis, fuck. And, based off of, whatever language or lack of that we were, brought up and educated into, whatever, right? So that's my little rantish thing, keeping me awake at this time of the hour. Thank you very much. Chris, I skipped you. I'm sorry. I had to let that off my chest, but yeah.
You said something, Derek, that reminded me of something Chris was saying with the words. You can imagine way back people first just pointing at things, going ugh, ugh, right, and then of course there was a period of time where ugh became ugger, and then ugger became the tree hugger or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it obviously has to change over time. Like, but that doesn't mean we don't understand where we're at in that process. And that's the part of it where the more you take a little time and pay attention, you learn the differences. Just like any skill or trade, you learn to look closer and learn the differences between one thing or another. Where you stand back as a beginner, it's just a bunch of the same, and that's true of anything. But yeah, Chris, did you want to jump in next?
One example that I always remember on what can be regarded as the etymology fallacy. That's just because something was originally described, and etymology doesn't mean that that's the actual, like, we could say, etymology is the true meaning of words. That's what the word etymology means, but sometimes it fails. And just one example to keep that in mind, to not always be like die hard over it, is go look up the word oxygen. And if you go look, I don't remember what it means, but it has nothing to do with like the molecule or the air, has something completely unrelated. So that's just one example of, the changing meaning of words. Yeah, sometimes like freedom, anarchy, they change. It's to limit our understanding. And that's the bad thing, because, the limitation, if you limit the definition of words, then you're limiting people's ability to understand the world. And Philip K. Dick has a quote: the basic tool for the manipulation of reality is the manipulation of words. If you can control the meaning of words, you can control the people who must use the words. And that's what it relates to what Fred was saying, because if they're trying to simplify things, um, that's what 1984 was about. That was a big theme in 1984 with the Newspeak. And another quote by Ludwig Wittgenstein is, the limits of my language means the limits of my world. So if you can't define things, and if you can't speak about them, if you can't reference them with a word to communicate about them, then you're not really going to be communicating about them. And if you're not aware of certain things because you don't have the words to use them, you're not aware of certain concepts, then that whole aspect of reality will be shut off to you. And it's all thanks to language and words that we're able to gain insight and knowledge of these things. And one thing Fred brought up is the simplicity. So we often think of simplification, keep things simple. KISS keep it simple, stupid, or keep it simple, silly. But you think of making things simple as being better, because it's simple is less confusion. And in a sense, yes, but there's a dual aspect because you keep it simple. It's easier to understand at the moment, but it's not going to bring you that greater clarity. See, we think of simple as opposing confusion, but we also see confusion opposed by clarity. But when you keep things simple, you're not bringing in that greater clarity. So initially, a simplification is a good way to introduce something to, like, say, whet the appetite, to tantalize the intellect, and maybe have it pursue greater depths of understanding of something. But you always need greater depth, greater detail, because the detail is where you get that greater clarity. So there's this play between simplicity and avoiding confusion, but then it also keeps you confused because if you don't go into greater detail, which takes you away from simplicity, you're not going to get that greater detail and that more profound understanding. Because that greater detail is that the more detail you have, the more you're able to see, and that brings that high definition, that HD view, and that clarity of what we're going to look at. And I have like well, it's a big paragraph, but from 1984. I'll just read the second one. So it's this guy talking with Winston from 1984, and he says, "Don't you see that the whole aim of Newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible, because there will be no words in which to express it. Every concept that can ever be needed will be expressed by exactly one word, with its meaning rigidly defined and all its subsidiary meanings rubbed out and forgotten." So this is what the goal of Newspeak was to narrow the range of thought. And again, if you can't think of certain things, like what we have in the censorship of our current era and has existed for thousands of years, those in power want to censor and control what people can even think about and even discuss. Well, that shuts off rather than have an expansive awareness of the world. Well, you're being shut off and you're being constricted in your ability to understand and formulate and conceptualize and discuss things and gain a greater alignment of your own inner reality with the outer reality as it actually is. So you end up living more in a fabricated, false, illusory world and unreality. I'll pass it to Sarah.
Excellent.
Have you guys ever got something from IKEA? If you get a piece of furniture from IKEA, it comes with these amazing instructions that don't have a single word in them because they make them, I think it's Swiss or something. They make them so you can understand them in every language. And the way they draw those pictures is so succinct and it shows just enough detail without too much that you can understand which piece they're talking about. And I think what you said, Chris, there was just reminding me of that in how we speak and how we use words. If we can describe the way IKEA does in pictures, succinctly, efficiently, but give enough information and detail so people know exactly what you're talking about, that is the goal. But I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, I was just gonna, I agree with everything everyone said, but I wanted to try and answer the question that the guy had. Build apart, I mean, the examples of words, Will and Chris gave some good examples of that, but you could just list and list and list the words of words that have changed their meaning. And really, it's not something I don't think people should focus on too much unless they are going into history and really looking at the history and the evolution of these things, because the parasite class controls all the publishing companies, so they can put in whatever definition they want. So it's almost irrelevant, when you're looking up definitions or whatever, you have to kind of go through history. And I think it would be important too for people to consider to trust more of their instincts and understand, like, when you're communicating with people, sometimes it's more than just words. There's context behind it. So sometimes context is what people need to focus on or really pull in as well when they're listening to people speak. And context matters. You could say a whole sentence, like you could tell somebody I love you, and not ever speak a word of it. And it's how you communicate that and how we do that. So that's part of the one of the traits that human beings have, like our natural inborn traits that we all have, this ability to want to be able to express communication in some way or communicate some way. So I just wanted to add in to everything that people should maybe consider, that when you're looking at language, it's not just the words that we speak that we should be looking at. We should be looking at how we communicate silently, how we communicate through art, because art, I say this all the time, art is its own language. I mean, it's part of, I mean, we wouldn't have language unless if art didn't exist. Like, art technically came first. It was maybe the first form of communication, because I mean, that we know in our history that we know of. Who knows? There might be a whole bunch more just like stored away, hidden in that underground Vatican library, so there's all kinds of things that we can still discover about this kind of stuff. But I just wanted to add that in, that, and maybe, to the person who asked the question, maybe they should discourage, or if they do this already, discourage the use of things like abbreviating sentences, because you don't want to spell out the whole word, or when you're typing something on the internet, or writing an email, or whatever it is you're doing, or maybe don't, put out a whole text message in like emojis, because that's the kind of thing that Chris was talking about with like the 1984 concept of dumbing down the thought process, so that we have no we don't have any practice skill set in actually communicating. You got like people trying to tell me something and like a whole text of emojis, and I'm like, I don't know what that means, because I I know how to read books, so I don't know how to read that. So it's I just wanted to add that in, and I'll leave that there.
Thanks, Sarah. It is art too. Learning to speak eloquently becomes an art form. You watch someone who's a really good speaker on like a TED Talk or something, you're like, damn, I'm inspired. So it is an art form. Go ahead, Will.
I was just going to interject because Sarah sparked something. Cursive. They don't teach cursive in public school anymore. My daughter knows cursive. I try to practice that with her all the time. AI has a hard time translating the cursive, how it's written. And this used to be kind of, especially in America, it was a uniformed style of writing. And that's something that's been completely, eradicated from, modern, quote unquote, modern education.
And real quick, we had actually talked about that kind of a few days before we had recorded, that, words and language isn't just so, purely logical, like there is a nonverbal, aspect to it. But we wanted to kind of, figure out who is this video going to be for? And, of course, we wanted to kind of keep it more basic and clear because Chris had brought up some good kill examples, and Derek wanted to talk about like green language and stuff like that. But yeah, there is that kind of more like deeper aspect when it comes to language and words that people should help explore. And there is like a non-verbal communication too, because when we are talking about communication, you don't necessarily need words, because you communicate like just with your expressions, just with your body, so. But yeah, we had thought about that.
Right on. Well, we got a few more minutes. Jerry, James, anyone who hasn't spoken up again on this round, feel free to jump in.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Save the best for last. Anyways, I don't know. I was just thinking like about telepathy, like how words are vibration, and like you can communicate with people telepathically without even saying a thing. and that might be, the future. People like don't even speak; they just, get their whatever they want to cross just telepathically. But I don't know. Derek is falling asleep there. Anyways, yeah, I think you guys made great points. One thing I'm very curious of, because I looked up words that change over time, was the meat. So let's see. Meat was used to describe any kind of solid food. Now it specifically refers to the flesh of animals. So, I mean, I looked up like a video on like words that changed meaning over time, and like it made sense. Whoever was, uh, teaching it, I can't recall anything, but that's an example. But yeah, I think going back to the origins is super important. And then something I didn't mention during the roundtable discussion, how we say words are magic, they're spells, like they're also curses, right? So we have to be careful about the words that we choose. And I don't know. What else did I want to say? Like, I guess, how you say that the word was God, but then someone said God is eternal. So he's like omnipresent. So I just wanted to say that. And I don't even know what else to say, but have the courage to speak, and I'll pass it to James.
Chris Nelson, did you say the Philip K. Dick quote?
Yeah.
All right. There's a lot going on. So sorry. So anyways, the Merriam-Webster dictionary is owned by Encyclopedia Britannica, okay, which is owned by the Safra banking family. And up until 2019, a woman named Leslie Gelb was the was on the editorial board of advisors. Leslie Gelb was the president emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations. And so now you can kind of understand the weaponization of language through the dictionary a little bit better. These are the people who decide. It's the bankers and the CFR members that own and control the way that words are defined in those big, thick books that people don't own anymore, anyways. So, but hey, freedom of speech, who can be against that? Teenagers come up with slang words all the time, so their parents can't figure out what they're talking about. Way to go, rebels. You're really doing a good job there. As far as the hieroglyphics that people call emojis, whatever, freedom of speech for the win. It's not until the mob comes crawling out and starts using words to manipulate and deceive people that it becomes an issue. And when they decide that they can change definitions at a whim, it does create an atmosphere of anxiety and stress, which can kind of, break down kind of a civil cohesion that might have once existed, where we were able to speak and know what words, what we meant by saying certain words. We use language to identify things. That's exactly why language was ever invented in the first place. We needed a way to point at something and say, this is what that is. That's an apple. And we all agree that we're going to, that's an apple. The very use of language itself, the vibration of language is used. Like we have this gift, like the vibrations of the syllables, the letters, the words, how all the letters make up the words, they all fit together a certain way. It's divine description, the way that the vibration holds the word together and carries that energy from my mouth to your ears. And you're able to process that and translate it and know what I'm saying. If we're fooling around with definitions, then there's no way for us to have anything more than a superficial relationship with reality itself. And that's dangerous. As far as any specific words, the first one that came to mind was vaccine. That one was changed very recently, and it took the world and it went ass over tea kettle on itself. And that's, I mean, just as an example, I think that Derek might have mentioned something about the different sexes and how they're playing around with that. And yeah, I agree, that's ridiculous. But at the end of the day, I mean,
Yeah,
like
one
I
of
already
our
said,
commenters brought that up too. People losing the definition of the basic gender, like
yeah,
defying reality itself.
yeah. But I mean, when it comes
There's
down to
no
it,
up, there's no down.
freedom of speech is, I mean, but we can't abuse it. It's an important thing to be able to hold on to, but that doesn't mean just because you're able to speak whatever which way you would be able to, if your mouth can make the words, go ahead and say them. There might be negative consequences for some of the words that are coming out of your mouth, but hey, if you have the bravery to say the words, then you should be able to take it, like a grown up when the consequences come your way. So, but it's not freedom of speech. So, just to reiterate, the gist is it's not freedom of speech to deceive people by altering definitions of the words that we use to identify reality itself. That's dangerous. That's a no no. And that's how freedom is decreased and slavery is increased as a result. So, we need to get back on the same page as far as language is concerned. There's many different languages. Most of them are beautiful. Some of them are a little rough around the edges. But again, freedom of speech. Woohoo. But yeah, I think that's it.
I was trying to look up, there's a famous story, James, of some king in history who had a lisp, and then supposedly that
Barcelona.
affected the whole language going forward. Looks like there's some disagreement about who that really was or how true that was. It doesn't matter though, because we can just see that happening. Someone
Right.
with enough power and clout uses a certain set of words, and everybody else starts repeating it. And it kind of brings me back to the Smurfs. You remember how the Smurfs used to call everything Smurfy? And pretty soon, like Smurf is like 80% of their whole language. Let's go Smurf over there and Smurf some up Smurf. It's like pretty soon, your whole language has become super limiting, and
Mm-hmm.
there's no way to uniquely describe things and differentiate things, and there's a lot of confusion possible. And I think that really uh, highlights what almost everybody said here in different ways, that we gotta um, basically put our mind and our hearts into this process of how we speak and which words we use, and are they in context. And then there's the practice and skill of getting better at that. And so we're trying to encourage everyone out there, because this is the thing that will or will not make the difference in the future of human freedom and human slavery, is whether you and I and those around us choose to put the time and energy that it takes to speak clearly and communicate carefully, so that other people can understand these things and we can work out the differences. And I would say the last important point I would say is, there's a tendency out there to think like people think you have to know. And there's only very few things we really have to know. We can have a lot of things in our head that we don't actually know. We just keep it there. We consider it. We say, well, that makes sense to an extent, but I don't know beyond that. Let it be. Your mind can hold on to many, many things. And in ancient history, we have stories of people that could recite a whole book out of memory. And we've lost some of those abilities. Is that due to all the shit they're spraying in the sky? Is that due to the breaking down of our language? Is that due to the chemicals in our food? I don't know. But we need to work on restructuring and rebuilding our ability to have minds that contain a lot of things that keep us from being limited. And we can see through the veils of all of these shortened, truncated words that are put together in a certain way to new speak us into doing what they fucking want us to do instead of what's moral. And I think what James was really saying in the end there is, be honest with your words. When you fucking lie, you are destroying freedom for everyone, including yourself. So that's my last thoughts. And I'm going to play a video as we end this episode, so we can all just kind of sneak out on our own time and leave any comments. But if anyone had something they were still hoping or dying to say, feel free to jump in now. I know you had some stuff prepared, Sarah, if you want to share some of that now, I'd be open to that.
Well, it's not a whole bunch. It's really just the history. What I think I might do is actually write an article and
Right on.
send it out to anybody who's interested. But one of the things that I was able to pull out really quick was it, starting with the spoken language, not written, was I think it's the oldest is Sanskrit, which is from 5000 BC. Or no, not the oldest. I think it was Tamil, and then Sumerian, of course. Three of the oldest. And then there's like some literature, some actual written literature I actually discovered just looking that up, called the Thalacapian, which I'm going to look a little bit more into. But it's a collection of writings that was all like grammar and poetics and context, how to speak, like putting it together, as sort of a baseline kind of how to put information together. And like a lot of our ancient information, like books and stuff that we have, are written in that kind of way as a teaching tool in order to. So I found that all really interesting. But I think I want to do quite a bit more research on this now too, and like pull out, some of the stuff you guys said as well. But I wanted to just say, like with what James was saying as well, that, and what everybody's saying, and anybody who's listening, as just like a last thought for me, is that we shouldn't throw out anything as far as communication goes. And I know there's a lot of people who are doing that, especially on the internet, and miscommunication is just ripe everywhere. And everybody wants to get triggered or, over this thing or that thing. And I don't think that we should, even though, you've got a parasite class controlling a lot of these things that we would be using as some sort of guide to teach us something. At the same time, that's all muddied, that's all corrupted in this way and that way. But you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You have to understand that, you know, the parasite class didn't come before reality, that came first. So we want to take what information is there, because, and then, channel that inner Dick Tracy in all of us and investigate what the reality of what a definition is, or how to use a word, pulling out the context or symbology, or like the meaning of the symbology or whatever it is, use the resources that we have and dig and dig and dig, and don't throw the baby out, when instead of just going, oh, so like this handful of stuff is like a total lie, so let's just throw it all out, it must be all lies. That's not the case. So that's a lot of the problem that I see with communication in general. So I just wanted to add that, like, what, because I agree with James that freedom of speech is utmost important, and we need to protect that, because it's the only thing that we can really give our children, is the right to enact, their thoughts, emotions, and actions, and give them freedom, and freedom of speech, and freedom of choice, and all these things, they come together at the same goal. So that's what I wanted to add. But I look forward to doing more of this research and pulling out some of the stuff you guys said.
Fantastic. I hope we inspired a whole nother presentation we can later watch. And I hope people that are watching this now or later are inspired. Please share this episode. And each of these people speaking here has work that can be shared. Connect with them on Facebook or Instagram. I know Sarah's on Facebook a lot. And Chris at evolveconsciousness.org. And Awaken Your Mind, and WillKeller.com, and Brandon Spencer's Twitch, and Leslie Powers, AliveThrive.life, Fred with his podcast is doing live shows a lot of time. You can catch him on Facebook, I know, and other
One Great Work
channels,
Network.
Libercast, One Great Work Network. There's so much awesome work out there. James recently just announced his new podcast, and we did an episode about 2 or 3 back. You can check out about the Voluntarist Academy. And Jerry's part of the One Great Work Warriors, and he's got his YouTube channel and starting some stuff on natural law. So, be inspired and get out there and do this. I'm having all these people on here to speak because I find it more powerful than my voice. I learn when I hear all these people speak. And so being able to listen to different perspectives and aggregate them and put them together is how we get closer to the truth. And I find it to be respectful of other human beings and the energy and time they put in. So thank each one and every one of you. If I didn't mention you, I'd super appreciate your work and involvement and words. Thanks for coming.
Appreciate you, Chris, and everyone here. Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chris, for hosting.
And I help.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Peace.
Good night.
All right, much love, y'all.
What up, Angela?
Words create thoughts. They can create beliefs in our mind. They can create concepts. They can create emotions. They can create axioms, in our thought forms, and they can create actions. So we should be conscious of the words that we use, and we should choose our words wisely, and we should become conscious, speakers. Words that we use should be reflective of our consciousness. So the understanding of words at their root level is key. And when we have the incorrect definitions of words, because like I said earlier, words create thoughts, words create beliefs, words create concepts within our mind. So if those definitions are incorrect, that's going to create incorrect thoughts, incorrect axioms, incorrect beliefs. And that's where the distortion comes from. So the truth is not about distortions. The truth is not about contortions or manipulation.
Language has been something I've always been interested in, and playing with words. It's actually pretty important, and especially for those trying to produce content, and or whether it be through videos or write articles or do your essays, whether it be just writing them, putting them on Substack, or having video essays to that. We want to have our words razor sharp so people can really understand it. We're trying to sharpen our swords, S words, take the S off of, the sword, and you have words. And we got to understand that language is the battlefield, and the dark occultists have, done this for eons.
It's super important to know your words, the definitions of words like the back of your hand. And it's easier to express yourself once you know these words. You get a better picture of the world, and that's what we're going to talk about, is the importance of definition, right? We use definitions to understand our reality. But what I wanted to talk about was the literary importance. So we have to read. But reading is how we become free, how we understand words, sharpen our words, because they're spells. And this brings me to the last roundtable discussion we had, where Brandon talked about white wizardry. So we want to use our words for good. I looked up natural law because I didn't understand the meaning of those words. And now, fast forward, I'm here doing a roundtable discussion with the One Great Work Warriors. So I really just encourage you to ask questions. If you don't know something, it's okay to say, I don't know. Write it down, look it up. That's what I've been doing lately, is if I don't understand something, I'm gonna ask. A definition has the potential to provide clarity, At their best, definitions act like a compass, providing a lost reader with several potential directions from which to proceed. For listeners, words are not just what the dictionary says, so just reinforcing, please read etymology. It'll really, empower you.
You're seeing the meaning of words changing. Their meanings and definitions are changing right in front of us. They're slowly doing it. And that's scary to me, because that's the problem, is that they're actually doing this. Because the one thing I do know is that words are powerful. I mean, think about it. They can invoke feelings. They can invoke thought. They can incite a reaction, either for good or bad, just by words. So that, to me, that's so powerful. And that's the thing, is that that's the danger too, is that if you don't have a good understanding of words and their meanings, then they can be used against you. And this is the problem, is if we're all assigning different meanings, what do you have? You have what we're talking about, in my opinion.
Yeah,
confusion.
And these are things like maybe when people first starting out, learning the etymology of words is definitely part of the waking process. When you say, wait a minute, that's fucked up. That's what that really means. It's like, wait, how come I didn't know that?
I love words. That passion, words are fun. And when you start getting into this, you start seeing all the connections and similarities. To communicate with other beings. And it's a power. It's a way to leverage things in the world. So the way we use our words is crucially important in this reality, because it's how we manipulate our environment. And if you think about it, like I'm saying, going back to little kids, I remember as the kids finally started getting the ability to just use the words, we used to say, use your words, because they'd want to start throwing a fit when they couldn't get their way. They'd be like, nah! And then we'd say, use your words, what's going on? Communicate with us what you need, And when the little kid has the ability to say, I'm hungry, or, then they don't have to go, bah! But right now we're living in a world of people that are still crying like babies. Not really having a control or understanding of the power of the syllables in their sentences, and how each individual piece of every word is a jewel that has a history and a context, and you put them together different ways and it means different things. And there's endless exploration and treasure in all these little parts and pieces of utterances that we make that change and control the world and environment we live in. And currently that environment is one of slavery, and we're speaking slave languages inside of a slavery system. So the better we come to understand that language, because that very language is part of the main thing that's controlling us and our minds, is because that's how reality changes in this world. It's spoken into existence. The word became flesh. The word was God. Damn it.
When we're talking about language, we're dealing with, like we said, words, we're dealing with speech, we're dealing with conversation, we're dealing with communication. So we are talking about, the tongue and our vocal cords, because our words are vibratory pieces of energy that go out into existence. And that's why I say is we should be clear and precise with the words that we use. And I'm all the fan of shutting the fuck up. I think that's something that a lot of us need to practice and think before we speak. Every word that we have, every word that we use in all of the language it encrypts something. It is representative of something in reality, in the objective world. Doesn't matter if it's a noun, doesn't matter if it's a verb. We are talking about something. And that's why we try to communicate these things. That's why, when it comes to speech, when it comes to language, we are the only ones that we know, human beings, that are capable of it. So it shows the higher states of consciousness. It shows the higher states of awareness and the responsibility that comes along with this tool. So grammar is the inventing and the combination of symbols, because words are nothing more but symbols. Symbols are a representation and a decryption of things in reality. When it came to understanding the importance of language, of literature, because we are trying to describe things, and that's what man has been doing since day one, is trying to make sense of things. So when Rick talked about everyone having their own interpretation of words, that in and of itself is why we are in the position that we're in, with all of this confusion, all of this ignorance, all of this distortion. Because if I'm, saying, well, this word means this definition toward me, and you're saying this definition means that toward you, how can we communicate? How can we harmonize? How can we come to understand? You can't. We're talking about words that were synonymous with morality, good, justice, and natural law. And the reason why this was so is because things that was considered higher in elevation, that pointed toward the sun, they were considered upright. They were good. They were moral, because again, the sun was always associated with knowledge, with light, with higher states of consciousness. So when we truly understand something, we are imploring that the light, the clarity is coming in. Therefore, it gives you elevation. It puts you in a position of power to make a choice. It puts you in that position of power so you can make that correct choice, hopefully the moral choice. Talking about the right thing and actually know what right is. So, having the correct understanding of these words is so important, because without that, and I'm going to keep saying this, we will be ignorant of the objective world, we will be ignorant of ourselves, and we will be ignorant of our natural law.
Going over the 5 domains of language, there is phonology, the rules of speech sounds, how phonemes are used, and think of, I'm in correspondence with people in France, and those are francophones, Anglophones is English, right? So yeah, I'm sure people understand that basic understanding. And then morphology, the rules of word structure, how morphemes are used. And then we go to syntax, the rules of, how our structures of sentences are formed, right? And then you guys mentioned semantics, right? The rules relating to the meanings of language. So that corresponds as well to the air elements in regards to, how we are sharpening our swords and to really be wielding the sword of truth, that double-edged sword that cuts through the bullshit. And that's going to correspond as to how we have correspondence or communication with other people, right? So these are things we've mentioned in previous discussions, and not like this is our forte per se, and that's an interesting word right there, because that, in French it means strong, and what is like fort, take the E off and drop the accent, of course, fort means like strong, stronghold, rather, right? And so, yeah, it's just beautiful how these things, line up when you understand, the root words of things and how they correspond between different languages. I love that shit. But what I don't love is that Orwellian double newspeak or whatever the hell that people are all caught up in, right?
Like the language, we got to keep going down these trails and beating up these words. And sharpening too, process is a slow process. You're like with a whetstone going down to finer and finer grades. It's a lot of rubbing, right? Like, so you're refining as we're talking to each other and having conversations with people and practicing our rhetoric. We're refining our sword and making it sharper by practicing with it, by shaving the edges off, by keep on working it. It's not just an overnight thing. You make a sword by beating on it over a period of time.